We are your home theater and AV questions answered. This is AVRant. Want your home theater or AV question answered by Tom and Rob? Send it to question@avrant.com.
Welcome to another edition of AV Rant. My name is Rob H, and this week I am here with
Lee Overstreet, pinch hitting once again. We're almost setting a record for minimal warning. This is equivalent of literally running into a room and hitting buttons and hitting start, go, lights, camera, action.
I had to say, doesn't this just feel better? Doesn't this just feel right, Lee? This is the way it's supposed to be. We're supposed to really contact you with no warning whatsoever out of the blue and be like, hey, man, plug all your stuff back in, put some lights on, let's get going.
For real, last night was thunderstorms, terrible crap blew through this area. And like really high winds and stuff. And so, I unplugged everything. And so when you contacted me earlier, there's other things going on yesterday. Just there's been good and bad news about my dad in the hospital. And it's very stressful. And so I couldn't get to sleep last night very well between weather and hearing that kind of news about my dad. And so I was sleeping late. So actually, when you texted me, I was still asleep. And when I woke up, I went, what? Podcast, go.
Perfect. Exactly what we want. Speaking of not sleeping so well, the eagle-eyed and eagle-eared among you will notice that Tom Andry, the normal host of this podcast, is absent this week, and that is unexpected, unplanned, and it is because he is ill. He is very much under the weather. We think probably with COVID, because all of the symptoms very much line up, and there was opportunity for him to have come into contact with people who had COVID, so it would not be surprising whatsoever if that is what it turns out to be. But he is, feeling very poorly, and so I was like, dude, just take the week off. We'll make something work. I'll force Lee. I'll drag him here and make him
just
podcast
shake
with
me awake. Sit up now.
Just all sorts of text alarms going off. So this is hopefully on the technical side going to work out this week. Fingers crossed that the video that I am at the moment recording continues to record throughout the entire thing and doesn't get utterly corrupted and lost. OBS already gave me a fright when we first started. So, it's just fantastic all around. We're a well-oiled machine, completely prepared.
Oh yeah.
And that's the type of podcast it's going to be this week.
Watching or listening to this, it worked. That's amazing.
Right, yeah. That's a big old if. We're very early into this episode recording.
That's pretty cool.
We'll see by the end what has happened. But why don't we just go ahead and introduce who the heck we are. This is AV Rant. We are your home theater and AV questions answered. To get your home theater and AV questions answered, all you have to do is ask, and you ask by emailing us at our email address, question@avrant.com. You can, of course, come to our website, which is avrant.com, to see all the show notes with links to the things that we talk about and links to our Flickr album, where you can look at the still images of anything that we might be referencing and talking about. You can see those on YouTube as well, youtube.com/avrant. And you can reach us in some other ways. We're on Facebook, facebook.com/avrant podcast. And then you can email us all individually. I am Rob at avrant.com. Tom is Tom at avrant.com. And Lee is Lee at avrant.com. So
finally, do you know we're approaching my exact 10-year anniversary on the show? It was the end of 2013. I did a show with Liz back in the day.
Oh wow! So,
So it's finally time to have that email address. And apparently, I'm customer support or complaints or whatever.
Yeah, why not? Somebody's got to field those calls.
I don't mind. That's fine.
We're sort of around on social medias. If I'm on a social media platform, search for @FirstReflect, and that'll be me if I exist there. I'm mostly trying to use Threads, but as far as people I follow, it's kind of dead over there for me right now, so I'm not there a ton. But yeah, definitely not doing much over on the old X anymore, as none of the advertisers are either. That was a fun story, everybody exiting that. So yeah, that's a wonderful thing. I've still, if you're watching the YouTube version, we haven't updated our graphics or anything. Still got Lee's X handle there at Lee Overtweet.
That's still my handle there. Okay. It's one of them. I don't do much with that, Lee Overtweet, because it's not supposed to call it a tweet anymore, but everybody still does. But I'm also on there as Tesla Lusa.
Yeah, I should update that graphic one day. Right. Maybe in another 10 years, we'll get around to it.
Here's the crazy thing about that account now. So, having Lee Overtweet doesn't make sense anymore.
Sure.
And being Tesla-lusa, it sounded so fun 2 years ago when we bought the car. You know what I mean? It was going to be so fun. And it's getting awkward. And I'm still there. And now what's really awkward is I created an Instagram account to go with that just for fun. Take pictures of the new car and everything. Yeah. And then that transferred into a Threads account.
Yeah, that's right.
And the feel and vibe and politics of Threads is very different than X. And now I'm over on Threads as Tesla-lusa.
Yeah.
I'm telling you what, I get called a commie on X and I get called a Nazi on Threads.
Oh, well, yes.
So I must be doing something right.
Yeah, and the internet has never been, at 0 or 10 and nowhere in between. I've never commented on that before, so naturally, that's the way things go.
So join me and have fun on these two crazy social media. Why not on Threads and X?
But yeah, since we are so incredibly well prepared for this episode, I don't really know what the length is going to be like. I have kind of a hard out in basically exactly 2 hours from now, so we're not going to be going too much beyond that point, so we'll see what we can get to this week. We got a nice crop of questions, and we'll definitely be getting to those. But we do start off each week talking about whatever we have watched in the week prior. Of course, Lee hasn't been here for a little while, so we can get into that. I don't see anything on the list there, but I'm sure Lee has watched something in the past 2-3 weeks. So what's been tickling your fancy?
Do you know what? Not much in the way of movies and new series. My attention span is just destroyed. It's been nuked recently between things that are stressing me out and just the way the old ADHD has evolved over the years. Do you know what I watch a lot of, though, is things on YouTube because, of course, you can get delivered very specific content. Very specific. And so I like sciencey, spacey stuff, and I like, electronic stuff and electric car stuff, obviously. So I'm watching a lot of that. But you know what? A lot of people do take some care. There's one guy called Everyday Astronaut that some of you might know about if you're into nerdy, spacey stuff. Okay. And you know what? He's got a 4K stream. It's not HDR, but it's a 4K stream, and he's covering space launches, I swear, better than NASA. Better than SpaceX. Between his commentary and the shots he's gotten, he has taken it to another level. So it's kind of fun to see how the tech that we have access to as just individuals, in his case, it's grown beyond what an individual would get, but the tech that you can use and not be a full television show or movie and still generate an amazing picture. It's kind of fun to watch. So if you're into space stuff, Everyday Astronaut, man, he has evolved from just a guy who owned a makeshift spacesuit and just did nerdy YouTube videos to now he, gets interviews and does live coverage he bought a van from like a TV station. To do his live coverage with, and I'm just so proud of the guy. So anyway, that's the kind of thing I end up watching a lot because my attention span is in the 10 to 20 minute range.
Yeah, well, that sounds like a good recommendation. And yeah, while you're over there on YouTube, just trying to sift through. I mean, like genres that you talked about, the subject matter that you talked about is unfortunately rife with plenty of the new AI channels that just gather up a bunch of nonsense and slap it all together and all have a very similar looking black and white logo and And
I'll tell you what makes the difference on YouTube, what makes the difference, and I think this is true for the kind of thing that we're doing here, what makes the difference is the person in reality. Yeah. If somebody's just trying to do a generic coverage of a topic, you could just do that with AI, and what's the point? Yep. The people who are real human beings that put their own flavor on it, that's where the magic is, and that's where AI is not going to be able to take over for a long time.
Yeah, just got to find them, but that's why you come to somebody like Lee, and he can tell you about Everyday Astronaut, and now you know to go there instead of one of the stupid AI channels.
He's done amazing documentaries about, like he did an 1.5-hour documentary, I think it was, about the evolution of Soviet rocket engines.
Okay,
if you want to get to that level, there's where you can go.
So as for what I watched this past week, I have started in on, I think I was up to the first 3 episodes of the 2nd season of Invincible. That's on Amazon Prime Video, the animated series based on one of Robert Kirkman's comic book series. So I really enjoyed the first season. It is very, very violent, very over-the-top violence in a lot of places. So, if that is not your thing, then this will not be your type of show. It is, of course, well aware of all the other comic book heroes, the multitudes and multitudes of comic book heroes that already exist. And so it's kind of doing the thing where it's like tongue-in-cheek, taking its own spin on, existing established comic book heroes, but, the new names, just changing the names around. But of course, there's only so many powers that we can imagine that people have, so mixing and matching all types of different things. But yeah, as far as season 2 goes, these first 3 episodes, it is a little bit like the first season kind of went along, introduced a lot of disparate things, and then brought it all together in the last 2 or 3 episodes of the season. Season 2 seems to be following a similar template, so it feels a little bit disjointed at this point because we're going off to various corners of the galaxy and meeting some new characters and repositioning some of the characters we met in season 1 in new places and that. And we aren't seeing through 3 episodes at the beginning where everything is headed just yet, but I'm used to that.
This is or is not something where I have to know everything about Marvel and DC.
You don't need to know a thing about anything established. I mean,
this stands alone.
You would want to start with season 1 of Invincible. You wouldn't want to hop right into season 2. Right. That would be definitely confusing. But yeah, no, you don't have to know a darn thing. I mean, if you have a passing understanding of Superman, then that's about as much as you need to know about superheroes. And so I think most people are pretty safe with that amount.
Well, I've explained my frustration. I'm just so done with comic book movies. And I'm kind of done with Star Wars and Star Trek. Sure. I just can't. I think it was a few shows ago where I was on with you and you told me, well, if you want to watch this next season of Mandalorian,
there you go.
You really need to. Nope.
I've
done.
seen some Book of Boba Fett. That's right.
Nope.
But yeah, Invincible, you don't need to know a darn thing. Like I say, it is very, very violent. There is not a lot of vulgar language, but some. It would absolutely be an R rating type of thing. Mm-hmm. So like I say, it's going to have to be a complete story in season 2. I really can't make any sort of judgment on it just yet because it is all feeling a bit disjointed. And I did kind of laugh because in Marvel Comics, there is like the Council of Reeds, the Council of Reed Richardses from all the various multiverses where he's the smartest man in every version of the multiverse. So all the multiversal versions of Reed Richards eventually get together and form a council to dictate how the multiverse should run. So there's basically a guy in Invincible taking on that role, but of course, being Robert Kirkman, he has to flip that on its head a little bit and change around what that council is going to be doing. So it's that type of thing. It's sort of like remixing established stuff, but with its own names and its own history. Speaking of comic book stuff, I watched what I believe is going to be, the second to last of the already made DC Extended Universe movies, because we still have Aquaman coming out at the end of this year.
Okay, here's where I tune out, right?
Yeah, that's
right. This is DC stuff. Okay, click.
Yeah, no, we still have Aquaman 2 ready to come out, already made and ready to go and coming out around Christmas time, I think, this year or something like that. Maybe it's this November. I can't remember when Aquaman 2 comes out. But before that was Blue Beetle. And Blue Beetle, I think, was the second to last of the ones they had already made. Now James Gunn is going to come in and do his whole reboot, reset, but keeping some of the same people around, and it's all going to be exceedingly confusing. But Blue Beetle was, a hero that we haven't seen on the big screen before. Blue Beetle has appeared in, the Arrowverse on television, but hasn't been in the DCEU before. And the previews for this really made me not particularly want to see this movie. I thought that the dialogue that they showed in all of the trailers was really cheesy, and I was kind of groaning through all of that, so I didn't go out to the theater to see it. But now it's on streaming. It's on Max in the States, and it's on Crave up here in Canada. And so I was like, okay, I'll throw on Blue Beetle and see how it is. And honestly, it isn't anywhere near as bad as I was expecting it to be from having looked at the trailers. In fact, there are many moments in it that are downright good, and out of all the comic book movies that we've watched so far, this is the one where I actually got a little choked up at one point, because there was one, honestly, really nicely done scene, basically had nothing to do with superheroism whatsoever in that particular scene. It was just a family and talking about a very relatable family situation, and it got me a little choked up because the performances were good. The grandmother of this family, it's a Mexican family. And the grandmother, I thought she was excellent throughout this. They do a lot of things where she is the reason that you're laughing out loud because they're, subverting some expectations, but she is the emotional core of this thing too and really killed it in that one scene. So I will absolutely take something like that all day long. I thought that the characters were likable. I thought they were funny. There are a bunch of things in this movie, a bunch of individual scenes and moments in this movie. I was like, was that just a complete studio note where it's like, yep, they're a Mexican family and one of them has a vehicle where the horn on the car plays La Cucaracha. I was like, really? We're going to do that? We're actually going to do that. It's right near the beginning of the movie where, they're like throwing in all the Mexican stereotype things. And I was like, okay, so basically were these studio notes and the people who made the movie were like, all right, let's just get it out of the way. All the stupid stuff that the studio wants us to include because it's a Mexican family. Like, yeah, we're going to put it all in there, but we're going to get it out of the way in like the first 5 minutes and then move the heck on.
Yeah, there's this feeling like you have to explain to the average American exactly the culture you're talking about, and that's all. But I mean, it was American
so
understands.
Cliche.
That's Americans for you. We're extremely cliche.
That's what I mean. Like, because there were so many strengths and good moments in this movie, I find it tough to believe that the actual original screenplay would have included that outlandishly cliche stuff, which, like I say, they pretty much speed through within the first 5 minutes.
I'm not even kidding.
Studio notes.
I think that's what it's for. I think you have to explain to Americans what they're seeing, and you have to use all the cultural stereotypes. So we go, oh, they're Mexican. Oh,
so yeah, that's
okay.
Right. So once you're past that very cringy part of it, and you get past the fact that they refer to their Toyota Tacoma pickup truck as a taco, because it's Tacoma.
A lot of people do that. A lot of people do that. Yeah.
Once you're able to get past that cliched stuff, there was a lot to like here. Now, Susan Sarandon is the bad guy. She is evil. She is so evil. Now, she does her whole thing where, she has her scene where she explains why she feels she's, validated in doing the things that she's doing, but she is just chewing the scenery evil. And I'm fine with that. This is a very over-the-top, humorous movie throughout most of it. There's a little bit of an issue where the costume for Blue Beetle, it very much looks like a less expensive Iron Man suit, except that they made the eyes kind of big and bug-like instead of being the slits in Iron Man's mask. But other than that, it's a blue Iron Man suit. And, the powers are... it really, really, really reminds me of Peter Parker's suits that were made for him by Tony Stark in the Marvel universe, right? Okay. So Tony Stark came along and had the more advanced spider suits that he made for Peter Parker in the MCU, and it was like, this is basically exactly that. It's got the AI voice in his head. It's got the same shots.
That's marketing too, because they're getting ready for Halloween costumes, right, and they need to be able to stamp them out for just different colors. So that's what that is. Yeah,
pretty much. So it's a mixed bag in quite a few ways, but because there were a lot of heartfelt scenes that actually it was acted well, it was written well, it was just good scenes. So I will take the good with the bad, and overall, definitely nowhere near as bad as I was worried it was going to be in the trailers. I think I would edge towards slightly thumbs up on this one, on balance. So yeah, if you were as turned off by the trailers as I was, give it a chance, because there is good stuff there. Just, don't pay too much attention the first 5 minutes, get through all that cringy stuff, and away we go.
Yeah, so it's not bad, has violence, has emotions.
Right.
Okay.
The violence is very cartoon violence. There's no blood.
I got you.
Yeah. So that's everything that we watched. Before we dig into the podcast proper here, wanted to mention, by the time you're seeing this, you've probably noticed there's another episode out this week, because we did manage to get 6 podcasters together for another Thanksgiving episode. Happy Thanksgiving to those in the United States who are, observing such things. And so yeah, there is a Thanksgiving crossover episode. DJ from Brightside Home Theater and one of his co-hosts over there, John, joined Lee and myself and Tom and Andrew from AV Gadgets, and we got the 6 of us together to have a nice little lovely chat, talk about what we're thankful for this year, and you can check that episode out. Maybe if you're seeing this on YouTube on the Wednesday, it'll be out the next day, but anytime after that, that episode will be available on our channels. So you can check that out and have a nice time while you're digesting your dinners.
While you're falling asleep on the couch at 2 p.m.
Alrighty, so why don't we go ahead and thank our listeners of the week. Listeners of the week are people who have supported the podcast in some way. One of those ways is financially by using PayPal over on our website, avrant.com. If you go over to the right-hand side, there is the picture of a cup of coffee, and it says support AVRant, and that link will take you to PayPal, where you can make a one-time donation or sign up to make a recurring donation through PayPal. If anybody did that, I don't know about it. Tom's the only one who sees and has access to the behind the scenes of that account if any of that money came in. So since he was not expecting to be away this week, no heads up about if anybody gave us a donation. But if you did, thank you. And we'll hear about it next week when Tom is back. Hopefully, fingers crossed, feeling well enough for him to be back next week. But over at patreon.com/AVRant podcast, you can sign up at that site to make an automatic monthly donation, if you please. The minimum that you can pledge is $1 per month. And so we want to thank our 134 patrons who are over there doing at least $1 per month. And we very much appreciate your financial support. And in addition to that, we have people who send us in notes of gratitude for just keeping the podcast going week after week in some form or fashion.
It's not always easy.
Video, not video, hosts, no hosts, whatever it might be. Here we are somehow, most every week, only missed here and there individual episodes. So first of all, going to thank Vince. Vince says, thank you, meaning us, for having good audio quality. He's watched some other YouTube channels and listened to some other home theater podcasts where their audio is just downright bad. So you'd think, given the subject matter, they'd care more about how their voices sound. Yeah, Lee is gesturing, if you're watching the video, to his microphone. That is pretty much it. It really does come down to the microphones more than anything else, because
that's your biggest thing. And then the method by which you get it into the computer. And then, of course, like we talk about with good home theater, the room that you're in. If you have terrible slap echo in your room, you're going to sound like you're in a garage, and it doesn't sound good. So
there's that. But I mean, even with a poor environment, if you have a good microphone, it makes a huge difference versus
step number one,
using your webcam's built-in microphone or your laptop's built-in microphone, which seems to be the case with quite a few people. And then I think what really makes the difference for us is each of, like, Tom records his audio, just his audio on his side. I record my audio, just my audio on my side. Lee does that when he's here as well, has the ability to do that. So that makes a huge difference, because rather than just like importing the whatever video chat call we're using and all of the audio glitches that might take place in that, and you're hearing that on the final recording, we have our clean individual audio recordings that we're able to piece together. So I think that makes a big, big difference.
We care. And in fact, I even, before I send my audio to Rob, I clean it up a little bit, because there is still a little background hiss, because the equipment I'm using is not the greatest in the world. And yeah, I care.
We have wonderful software that can clean up, steady state noises like that. And then I do, we data compress the heck out of it to take up very little bandwidth. But when it's just voices and not music or sound effects or something like that, it works out pretty well. So that makes all the difference there. But thank you, Vince, for saying that. Also, thanks for notes of gratitude from Brandon Sasi, who says we are incredibly entertaining and informative. That's a quote. Ooh. So thank you very much for saying so. Karl Mohsen, who says they're a big fan of the podcast. So thank you so much. Capitalized, big fan. So that's like a title over there. I appreciate
that's
that.
The name.
Also, notes of gratitude from Trevor and from Alan. Our suggestion last week for a different listener, not Alan, but we made some suggestions for Anker's Soundcore Space series noise canceling headphones. They're A40 in-ears and they're Q45 over-ear full-sized headphones. And so he was like, oh, I have that exact same question and pretty much the exact same set of needs, and those should do the trick. He had $250 to spend, and you could get both of those for $250, because
that worked out.
It works out pretty darn nicely. It was as though we had anticipated everything Alan needed.
We can just sense the questions before they come in now. That's our new powers.
There's often a theme. And then, one more note of gratitude from Greg. So that was Vince, Brandon, Sasi, J. Karl, Mohsen, Trevor, Alan, and Greg. Thank you all very, very much for your notes of gratitude and encouragement. They're super duper appreciated right now. And a big, big thank you to everybody who continues to listen and send in your questions. So
shall I take us into some news?
Absolutely. I'll give my voice a little rest, have a little drink of water, and Lee can read some news.
All right, news time. Last week, we talked about the one-night-only theatrical return of The Abyss Special Edition that's been remastered in 4K, but said we didn't have a release date yet for the anticipated Ultra HD Blu-ray version. Well, right after we finished recording, Disney announced not just The Abyss, but 6 James Cameron movies coming to 4K digital and Ultra HD Blu-ray in brand new collector's editions with new 4K masters, Dolby Vision HDR, Dolby Atmos audio, and hours of new special features. So hopefully some interesting background and making of and commentary and things like that. The Digital Bits has an exhaustive breakdown, and here are the highlights. Titanic 25th Anniversary Collector's Edition. First of all, that's been 25 years. Let me just take a deep breath at how old I am. Oh, that's 25 years. Okay.
It's been 25 years. That's right.
So it's coming to 4K digital and Ultra HD Blu-ray on December 5th. December 12th sees the 4K digital collector's edition releases of Aliens, The Abyss, True Lies, Avatar, and Avatar: The Way of Water. Ultra HD Blu-rays for the collector's editions of Avatar and Avatar: The Way of Water release 1 week later on December 19th with a giant collection of new special features. It's kind of pushing it to get it for Christmas, though. There will also be a new Avatar 3D Blu-ray version, remastered from the 4K version, and it should be noted that only the theatrical cut of Avatar will have a Dolby Atmos soundtrack. The special edition and collector's extended cut used 5.1 DTS HD master audio. Ultra HD Blu-ray collector's editions of The Abyss, True Lies, and Aliens release well into the new year on March 12th. The Abyss Special Edition is 26 minutes longer than the theatrical cut. Aliens Special Edition is 17 minutes longer. Both cuts are present on the discs, and Aliens is the only release out of these 6 movies that doesn't have any new special features. But hey, 17 minutes is 17 minutes.
People have been waiting a long time for these James Cameron movies to be available on a format better than DVD in several cases. The Abyss and True Lies, there never was a Blu-ray. There never was a high-definition release on Blu-ray. Yep. Some people have come across downloadable versions that you could buy digitally of those movies that were at least in HD, but this is going to be the first time you can buy them in 4K resolution with HDR, updated Dolby Atmos soundtracks. James Cameron was directly involved in the remasterings of all of these, so it has his full stamp of approval. A little bit weird that you can get the digital versions, if you're going through Apple Movies or through Vudu, that type of thing, Movies Anywhere, that you'll be able to get those, all of them, by December 12th. In the case of Titanic, it's December 5th there, but December 12th for all of them in the digital and downloadable versions, but that the physical versions, aren't coming out. The Avatar movies are coming out before the end of the year, but The Abyss, True Lies, and Aliens that people have definitely been waiting for aren't until March 12th of the new year for the physical Ultra HD Blu-ray. So still a bit of a wait, but we have a date. We know that they really are coming. It's all completely official and all of that. So that is good news for those of us who have been waiting this long.
If you're fans of those movies, I still can't believe that some of those not available in HD. That's wild.
Yeah, I know.
Here we go. We recently talked about our picks for reasonably affordable colorimeters for anyone who wants to take their own TV measurements at home and perform their own TV calibration. And now Portrait Displays is releasing their new $300 C7 HDR, the first consumer colorimeter that can accurately measure all the way up to 10,000 nits. Goodness. It can also measure accurately down to 0.002 nits, 2,000ths of a nit. And it is field upgradable, meaning that Portrait Displays can offer new display profiles to C7 HDR owners without them having to return them to the factory for an update and without having to pay for a spectroradiometer.
Spectroradiometer.
Spectroradiometer in order to manually profile new types of displays for themselves. At $300, it's considerably more affordable than the outgoing C6 model, and you can purchase it in a bundle with either Calman Home for LG or Calman Home for Panasonic at a $45 discount, meaning you get the meter and software for $400 total. So if that's a thing you want to do, if you want to nerd out on measuring, not a bad deal for that.
Yeah, over at the Portrait Displays store, the meters that I just mentioned and recommended a week or two ago, the i1 display and the old C6 that they used to sell. They don't even have those anymore on the store. They've just taken them off the store. Both have been replaced now by the C7 HDR. But I'm excited about this meter. I would be all over this in a heartbeat. Particularly, like if you were thinking, okay, should I hire a professional calibrator, but I'm the sort of person who's interested in giving this a try to do it for myself, $400 for the bundle of the $300 meter and paying only $100 instead of $145 for Calman Home, that's a pretty darn good deal, because pretty much any professional calibrator one-time calibration of your display is going to cost more than $400 these days.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
And, what was nice about the C6 meter that Portrait Displays used to sell is that was a colorimeter. With a colorimeter, there are color filters inside. If they're high-quality color filters, they'll last for years and years and years and years. But it does mean that whatever light is entering into the lens of the meter is going through a color filter, then going on to the sensor, the light sensor that's back there, and the colorimeter overall is then measuring whatever the wavelengths of light are there and how many lumens, how many nits of light at that given wavelength. It is not taking a direct reading of the source of light with no filter in between and just reading the wavelength, which is what a spectral radiometer does. A spectral radiometer just directly reads the wavelength of light. And that means that it is much more accurate in terms of getting you the exact wavelength of light that's being measured, but it takes much longer. A colorimeter works very much just like a snapshot camera. And so that is this idea of profiling. What you would normally do manually back in the day is take a spectral radiometer, an expensive device, directly read pure red, pure green, and pure blue from your display. And then you would say, okay, those are the wavelengths that are coming out when I tell the display to produce pure red, pure green, and pure blue. And now I compare what did my spectral read versus what did my colorimeter read, and I can use the very, very accurate readings, direct readings from the spectral radiometer to calibrate the colorimeter, and then use the colorimeter like a snapshot camera to quickly go through all the calibration measurements. It was a two-step process. Well, with the C6 and now the C7, but starting with the C6, what Portrait Displays did is they just preloaded that colorimeter with a bunch of the most commonly calibrated displays and said, okay, we know that these displays, I mean, yes, from unit to unit, maybe there's some tiny variation. So the most critical would still use a spectroradiometer on that individual unit. But overall, you're going to say, okay, if this is a given type of LCD display with this type of CCFL backlight or this type of LED backlight or this type of mini LED backlight, the exact readings of pure red, pure green, and pure blue from that type of display is going to be very, very similar. If it's this OLED, if it's this quantum dot OLED, it's going to be, right around here, pre-profiled those things and entered them into the C6. But when it came time to update it, you kind of had to send it back to Portrait Displays and have them update the database inside of there for you. So this C7 greatly improves upon that, which is you don't have to physically send it in anywhere. You can download updates where they're doing the profiling. They sell
everything gets updates now.
Yes, they sell those new profiles. They aren't given to you for free. They usually they didn't mention this specifically for the new C7 HDR, but I would assume I guess it's not really fair to make the assumption, but Portrait Displays almost always gives you 1 year of free updates. Like with any of their Calman software, they'll give you 1 year of free updates. But then if you want updates beyond that, you have to pay for them. So I would guess it's probably going to be a similar situation with the C7. Like I say, I don't know that for absolute sure, and I shouldn't make promises on their behalf, but given their track record, that would, be my assumption. It would kind of surprise me if they didn't do things that way. But yeah, I love this. I love that it's really quite reasonably affordable, that you can get the bundle for $400, which is the same or less as a single professional calibration, and you can go on your way with that. I feel
like a review from you is coming. Inevitably. Inevitably.
I don't want to promise it, though, because Lord knows time never is what I expect it to be.
Oh, I understand, but it feels like you want that. Anyway, back in August, The Verge called out Sonos for the problems their Arc and Beam soundbars were having with certain Dolby Atmos signals. Tom Warren reliably and repeatedly demonstrated how simply navigating the Xbox Series X menus or an Apple TV 4K would result in an incredibly loud bang from either of the Dolby Atmos soundbars made by Sonos, and he surmised it was due to an issue with the Dolby MAT format, Dolby MAT format, that both of those source devices use to transmit Dolby Atmos audio. Sonos has now confirmed all of that and issued a fix. So, if you own a Sonos Arc or Beam soundbar, be sure to update its firmware. Everything has updates as soon as possible to upgrade the internal Dolby decoder and avoid this scary burst of noise.
Yes,
that is rough.
It's been years. It's been years that this has been an issue. It took ages and ages for them to admit there was a problem, then figure out exactly what was causing the problem, and finally now have a fix for it. But glad that they do. Glad that they finally have a fix for it. It's about time that you're able to actually use Dolby Atmos audio on your Dolby Atmos soundbar without fear of breaking the drivers or bursting your eardrums. Because I mean, this was not like how all of us, we've had the occasional like pop or something like that come from our system, a thump or something like that when there's a weird power event or something along those lines.
I told you about the subwoofers recently.
That's
for me,
right.
the big popping sound.
The sound that these soundbars were making was none of that. It was a full-on, like, as loud as a gunshot, scary, ridiculous noise that it was making. Completely unacceptable. I mean, if you were like doing something at night while someone else in the house is asleep, they would have literally thought that a gun went off. It was ridiculous. So glad that there's finally a fix for this.
It's nice that even after all this time they fixed it, because most companies would be like, well, we'll just do better in the future. It's been a while. We don't know, whatever. So that's good. If you use an NVidia Shield TV Pro, you'll be glad to know that the forthcoming more updates, to software version 9.1.2 will add the most critical missing feature, Oro 3D support. How can any of us live without Oro 3D support?
We have been wondering this for some time.
Yes, the long nightmare is over, and Shield TV Pro owners will finally be able to send full Oro 3D bit streams via HDMI from all of that Oro 3D streaming content. Whew! I'll sleep better tonight.
Absolutely. Sigh of relief. It's finally, I had to throw that news story in. And that was with the assumption Tom would be here, because how much he would enjoy and care so much about having Oro 3D support. But you know what? Hey, nice that they did it. Why the heck not? Some people are definitely...
Let's be sure to tell him, because that's going to cure his COVID right away.
Yeah, that could be it. I mean... I can't personally think of a single streaming service in North America that uses Oro 3D. Maybe somewhere in Europe there's some streaming content that uses it, but I would most likely bet this is mostly about people who have backed up discs that have Oro 3D on.
Yeah, that's got to be it, right?
Have been like, okay, the NVIDIA Shield, the best Plex playback device that you can get to hook up to your TV for, a fairly small amount of money, plays back Plex wonderfully, but there was no way of getting Oro 3D bitstream out prior, and now there will be.
Maybe that's what I need to look at. You remember me telling you I need a better way to play stuff that's on our network system.
Yeah, that was during the Thanksgiving podcast. I think you mentioned that.
Yeah, so that's coming up, like tomorrow or whatever.
Yeah, that's right.
So the thing we did in the past that's coming tomorrow. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So maybe I should look at that. I don't know. Maybe it's
that's what I said at the time.
Yeah, that's what you're going to say, Rob.
It will continue to be the case. Plex is, I think, what you need to do, and an NVIDIA Shield is the easiest way to play it back on your TV.
Years ago, I was aware of software that did this sort of thing, and I've always had content, video, audio on a network system for, I'm talking decades. And so I knew this was a thing, and I think I just tried Plex too early in history.
That could be.
And I think I didn't like how it really overdid everything. It was very resource heavy on the computer that had all the data on it. Mm-hmm. And instead, I found some little minimal utility that didn't have every feature of Plex, but used a simpler standard, the name of which I forget now because I gave up on the whole project. So maybe it's time, now that we have faster, better computers, to revisit that. I think that's what happened to me in Plex.
Could be.
Let's move on to some listener and viewer comments.
There's just one this week, but there is a comment.
All right. Well, it's a multiple part comment. So
sure.
Tyler has a nice big comment. Wanted to share some praise for Silver Ticket. He knows we love him as a value brand for projection screens, but he wanted to mention how great their customer service was when he contacted them recently. Man, I love when this goes right.
Yeah.
He was hanging some acoustic panels in his room and somehow cut his hand. Oh, some drops of blood got onto his Silver Ticket screen, and he wasn't sure how to clean it or if it would even be possible. He decided to try emailing Silver Ticket directly, and they sent him a reply within 10 minutes on a Friday afternoon. And They didn't even suspect he had murdered someone and wrapped them up in his Silver Ticket screen. They said to hold a slightly damp rag to the back side of the screen and then use a magic eraser to lightly dab and circle the stains until they were gone. But if that didn't work, they said they could ship him a replacement screen material, no frame, at a highly discounted price because life happens, quote unquote, and they wanted to make sure he was taken care of and didn't murder any of them. Thankfully, their suggested cleaning technique worked like a charm, and there's no signs of the drops of blood whatsoever to all your murderers out there. But it felt great to know that he wouldn't have to replace the entire screen and frame if the cleaning hadn't worked. So kudos to Silver Ticket, and he's very glad we recommended them. That is great because I've had both drops of blood and other stains. I always get some sort of weird grease stain on a shirt because I'm cooking and I don't feel like putting on a giant apron or something. And I have such terrible luck getting stains out of anything. So the feeling of like, oh no, I've ruined this thing. And then what's this magic technique? Okay, so it was a damp rag on the back and a magic eraser, right?
Yep.
Oh, how good that must have felt. So I can see why he wants to comment on that. Yeah.
Yeah, I would presume that this would have been like one of their solid white screens, not one of the acoustically transparent, because acoustically transparent with a woven basically fabric, I think it would probably be a little bit tougher to get stains and drops and things like that out of there. Maybe not, I'm not sure, but if it's one of the solid, not acoustically transparent standard white screens, that material I could definitely see being cleanable, particularly in this fashion. So really glad that works.
I'm fascinated that it's permeable such that the damp rag on the back pulls the liquid through to the magic eraser or pulls the stain down into the wet rag. So there's some amount of permeability that's happening there, and that's just kind of neato. I don't understand.
Yeah, there's got to be something there. And I mean,
how that's happening.
Obviously, if the stain were like right in the middle of your screen, you'd need a second person.
Yeah.
Nobody's arms are going to be all the way around. I mean, this must have been near the edge if he did this by himself.
You'd have to measure. Yeah, right? Like measuring where your target is. That's funny. Or put a tiny pinprick through it. I don't know.
No, don't do that. I wouldn't go doing that. But very glad that worked out. Really happy to hear that you had such a positive experience with the customer service. Because I mean, that's one of the things that people often point to, like why pay more for, say, a Stewart film screen or something, and they'll mention the service. And I will say, Stewart film screen as a specific example, their service across the board, every type of sales service, every type of if you do need something fixed, if you need something replaced, like they are absolutely top notch. That is definitely true. Right. But there's sort of the assumption that because they're so inexpensive, something like Silver Ticket is just never going to reply to you. There'll be no help, and it's essentially disposable. If something goes wrong, hey, just buy an entire new one. Turned out, at least in this instance, that is not the case. There really was a person behind the customer service line. It wasn't just an AI robot. And even if the cleaning hadn't worked, they were prepared to, make him whole in a way. He would have had to pay for the material replacement, but it's not the same as buying the entire frame and screen over again and having to discard the original one. So that's great.
It does remind me of my call on the weekend to SVS, just yelling about how, oh God, it went pop and they won't come on. The subwoofers are dead. And the answer was just relax and wait. Just wait. Turn them back on. Are they okay now? Holy cow, they're okay now. I mostly called SVS for therapy is basically what I did. I just had to wait a few minutes.
But I don't think they minded.
No, actually, the guy was super, super nice. So sometimes these niche products, you buy a quality thing, they actually care. How about that? All right, shall we do actual questions?
Let's shall. We have some left over from last week. We answered a couple of Infinite Garys, but we have more from Infinite Gary, and we must because Lee is here.
I'm here, therefore there's Infinite Gary. The Infinite Gary just flows every week.
That's right.
Infinite Gary asks, do we ever conduct our own comparison evaluations for things like analog versus digital output from a CD player, or one stereo preamp versus another, why or why not? He recently tried a handful of comparisons between his Parasound P3 preamp versus his Lexicon MC10, as well as the analog versus HDMI outputs of his Oppo 203 and Panasonic UB9000, both acting as CD players. He kept the room and the speakers and amplification, self-powered Dynaudio Focus 110A monitors in this case, all the same. And he says he started out by keeping the volume the same, but then also purposely experimented with different volume levels to see if that alone would make a difference to his conclusions, which he says it did not. In all cases, he preferred the sound when using the Lexicon over the Parasound. He says it was easy to hear better clarity and vitality.
Those were his exact words in the email, so I'm going to put those in quotes. Clarity
no, I got you.
And vitality.
And vitality. It grew more hair on his chest. But he liked the sound when using the analog outputs from the Panasonic UB9000 player into the Lexicon, the best of all. He says it was clearly the best, the very best. But we seem to poo-poo that sort of description, can you tell, and drawing any firm conclusions from this type of comparison. Yeah. Why? We've often told people that they can trust their own ears, but usually only when they're saying that they don't hear a difference and that they're thinking they don't need to upgrade anything. Yeah, well, why shouldn't hearing a difference be good enough to draw a strong conclusion and make recommendations to others based on that experience? I'll take a shot at this first.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, yeah, this is an open-ended topic, so absolutely.
Because when you compare very good products, one to another, and there's no way you have some sort of perfect blind test scientific setup. There's no way. And you're comparing two very good things. It is just highly unlikely that there is a difference that a human can perceive in a situation like that. It's just not likely. But however, if you like a difference, then you like it and it's real for you. And so that's fine. We just don't want people to be chasing the purple unicorn where they always think that there's a better this and a better that. And if only you know the magic solution and real good audio listeners can hear this and they can't hear that, because that is just not how it works. Unless there is a problem, you can hear a problem, but you can't usually hear an improvement between two very comparable high quality things in a controlled setting. You usually can't. So that's why we sound all poo-pooey. But if you hear something, then you hear it. Just make sure if you're telling someone about it that you're saying, this is what I heard. You may hear something different. You may hear something different because it is unusual to hear something different in this case. But here's what I heard. So that's what I try to tell people. Because I just don't, I've learned you cannot trust your brain's perception of reality every time. You just can't. Humans are smushy. Our senses are smushy. Our perceptions and thoughts are just so smushy. Memories don't work. Yeah.
Plays a huge role. Yeah. I mean, basically the technical answer to this is you are running head on with this question into why and how the scientific method became a thing.
Yes, exactly.
It is the idea of removing variables so that you can come down to a situation of causation, not just correlation.
True.
We're philosophically running right into the reason that the scientific method exists and how it came to be developed. Because if you're going to say, okay, here's whatever, two things that are supposed to perform a similar or same function. Here's A versus B. And I'm just going to show you A and I'm going to show you B and I'm going to say, which one do you prefer? And you're going to pick one of them. And then you're going to go off to your friends and say, hey, if you run into this choice, this is the one that I liked. Here's the reason why, whatever it is. But that is doing such a poor job of determining the actual causation of why you picked A over B. Right. Maybe there's a correlation. Maybe there's an explanation. But is there a causation? Do we actually know the reason why you chose A over B? And when we start trying to drill down into figuring out reliably and repeatedly why you chose A over B, we end up having to, if it didn't exist already, you would end up developing the scientific method.
Yes. You'd have to if you ever wanted good results and to figure anything out. In Gary's case in particular, what he just described, I would really want, at the very least, someone else to be switching randomly between A and B, and then he doesn't know if he's listening to A and B, and then listen that way. So it's just, none of us want to think that we have biases or that we can just sort of invent feelings and thoughts in our heads, but I promise you the way human brains work, we're all subject to it. And so like when I say I like Yamaha amplifiers better, I think they sound better. I know better than to think that if I had a good Denon, it wouldn't sound just as good. But I have a history with it.
Or that if you had the Yamaha and the Denon behind, an opaque screen where you had no idea which one was which, and you were comparing them, that you would reliably able to pick out the Yamaha versus the Denon.
No, almost certainly not.
That's the whole audiophile thing.
Yes, and the physical nature of a component, especially like a speaker or something, you pick something up and it feels good. It's got a nice solid feel to it.
Or you
something
like the
about
way it looks.
Oh yeah, something about the way the material looks higher end, and you're like, oh, this is going to sound good. This is definitely going to sound good. Like that works to a point. If you pick up a speaker and it's like really light, and you can kind of flex the back piece on it that's just press board of some sort, that's probably not going to sound very good. But but again, I want to say that if you like a thing and you believe something's better, it's okay to like the thing and believe it's better. Just know in your mind that you might be wrong. and that's okay. That doesn't make you dumb. That doesn't make your perception bad. It doesn't mean you're losing your mind. It just means you like a thing, It's hard to do science in your home with listening tests. It's very, very hard.
Rigorous scientific experimentation is incredibly difficult. It's why good studies of seemingly very narrow and specific comparisons and questions take years in many cases. And you're like, how? Isn't this a simple comparison that we should be able to knock out in a couple of hours? It's like, why does it take months or years to write a scientific paper on something like that? It's like, no, because rigorous science is really, really difficult. But part of it is philosophical as well, and this is where Tom, I can speak for Tom on this, and where I from what Lee is saying, I believe Lee is right on board with us here. We start at this point in our lives, and at this point in our experience with not just audio and video equipment, but all types of things in life. We come from it from the standpoint of there probably isn't a noticeable difference, like in most things.
Between two equally priced and feature set objects.
Forget even price, just two things that are doing the same job. There just probably isn't that's the starting assumption, right?
Yeah, that's a safe starting assumption, yeah.
Yeah, and then it needs to be proven to us in a rigorous way that there actually is a difference, and there actually is a qualitative a difference between two things. We're going to start with the assumption that there isn't a noticeable difference. Now that, I think, goes in opposition to a lot of audiophiles and a lot of AV enthusiasts online who start with the assumption that there is a difference. That's the beginning assumption, and that if you don't notice the difference right away, well, you just got to listen longer until you can you can eventually hear the difference that I am pretty darn sure is there.
Yeah. Got to let those speakers break in.
That's right. We come from the polar opposite end. We're like, there's not going to be a difference. Then there really has to be a repeatedly provable difference for us to ever believe. And even if there is a difference, we're going to look for all the reasons besides objective performance for why we perceived a difference. Did it have something to do with the environment around the thing that's supposedly under test? Did it have to do with my own ability to perceive things, my level of tiredness? Was I thinking about something else? My mood, all of these things can have an impact.
And am I just trying not to seem dumb?
Sure.
People get afraid to admit they don't hear or see a difference in something because they think it makes them seem less capable in some way. And so we're like, oh, yes, of course, I agree with you. Yes, I see the same thing you're saying.
Was I expecting, or did I feel as though I was expected to hear a difference?
Exactly.
Huge impact that can have psychoacoustically, and not in any way a lie to report that you did hear a difference, with that being the only reason, expectation, because if we hooked you up to an fMRI machine and could see your brain waves in real time, there would be a difference in your brain waves if you expected there to be a difference. Your brain genuinely experienced a difference in an objectively measurable way, even if the measurement of the device that wasn't done by your human perception was done by an objective measurement machine, says there is no difference. If you expected there to be, your brain will actually fill that in. It'll fill in the gaps for you to make up the difference between what's there and what you expected to be there.
Yeah, it's like me holding that high quality speaker that looks really good and it's really heavy for its size, and oh, this is going to sound great.
So going back to the original part of this question, this was originally directed at Tom and I, but this would go for Lee as well. Do we ever conduct our own evaluations on things like that? Why or why not? Or he's had these comparisons. Why would we not say that this is a completely valid way to make recommendations to other people? What if Tom and I both took 2 different amplifiers connected to our speakers, and Tom and I came back and discussed it, and we both agreed that, we heard a difference between amplifier A and B, and both of us thought amplifier A was the superior amplifier. Wouldn't that be enough for Tom and I to go out there and scream from the mountaintops to everybody that they ought to go out and buy amplifier A? And we would go, no. And the reason is because we have, in fact, done a lot of comparisons and evaluations as scientifically rigorously as our abilities have allowed us to do. And what those prior comparisons have taught us is the most variable thing is me. I'm the most variable thing.
Yeah, it's up here, these things, these things.
It is the experience of having done fully blind comparison tests with equipment that I would have sworn to you beforehand up and down. I can easily tell the difference between these two things. And you know what? Maybe even it's a scenario where the one that is objectively not as accurate is the one that I prefer, but I would be easily able to tell them apart. Not, which one is more accurate. Maybe I'd struggle with that, but I tell them apart. No problem. Sure. Then it turns out in the fully blind listening comparisons, I'm like, I can't. It's a coin flip.
Let me tell you, my heart kind of sank once. Well, it's been years now, where there was an online listening test where you were listening to the same clip of music encoded at 128 K and at 256 and at uncompressed, right?
Sure.
And I think there maybe have been 4 levels of it. I don't know. It's been several years back.
Yeah.
And I remember like, I'm going to kill this. I am picky with audio. I've got really good studio headphones over here.
And there is objectively a difference between this thing. There is literally data missing in the 128 kilobit MP3.
Right.
That is without any human interference, completely provable fact that there's a real difference and information missing from one of them.
Yeah. And I'll tell you what, there most of the samples, I could tell the 128, most of them. But there were a few where I'm like, oh my God. I listened to all 3 or 4 clips or whatever it was, and I'm like, it sounds exactly the same.
Yeah,
Am I dying? Am I getting old?
And you would have sworn prior to that experience, I can tell data compressed MP3, lossy MP3 versus uncompressed easily. Yeah. I mean, one of our favorite examples, Mark Waldrip, who was like an absolute champion of high-res audio, right? Recording things 24-bit at 96 kilohertz or 192 kilohertz, releasing them in that high-res format, uncompressed, no data compression, all of those things. He championed that for ages. He was brave enough to do a series of blind listening tests, and not just by himself, with groups of listeners and all that. And at the end of all that, came to the conclusion that he cannot in any way reliably tell between CD quality and high-res quality.
You cannot.
There were the instances where, something was done wrong in the encoding, done wrong in the downsampling to CD or something like that. And but that was different. It was, if it was encoded properly, just the raw, 16-bit versus 24-bit, 44.1 kilohertz versus 192 kilohertz, which he had sworn up and down for years. And in fact, sold things that he had made on the claim that it was easy to hear the difference between those things. 100% believed it. And there wasn't a smattering of a lie in what he was saying. This wasn't like he knew it was wrong and was trying to deceive people about it. No, 100% genuinely believed it, but was brave enough to go through the whole series of actual rigorously tested blind comparisons and was like, turns out, can't.
Yeah, and I'm telling you what, using the word brave is very accurate. I think it might be a male hormone problem. I don't know, but like, boy, it is hard to go, ooh, you know what? This thing I thought was right for a long time, not right. Yes. And so again, when Gary's talking about listening to two things that should be equivalent, there's no reason for those two things to sound any different. At this point in time, we've got the technology.
Well, especially like, say the HDMI output of a CD of one optical disc player versus another. There is no technical reason why that should have any sort of audible difference.
None
but Gary's
whatsoever.
saying, oh, I heard a difference and I prefer the way the Panasonic sounded. That's not a lie. That
right, he's not lying that he heard it.
That's right. If we hooked you up to an fMRI machine, your brainwaves might in fact be different. It might be demonstrably true that your brain perceived two different things. But if we did a fully controlled, rigorous comparison, blind, then I am very confident you would not be able to hear the difference. You would not be able to tell.
I'd lay good money on it. And that's not saying anything bad about Gary.
Absolutely not.
That's
or anyone else who feels the same way.
Humans. That's humans. We're all human. Hard to admit sometimes that you're a human. We feel so special. I guess let's continue on with Gary's question, although that's a topic that I think is so important for everybody.
No, that's why I wanted to spend some time on it, but I want to get through the rest of these questions too, and I think we've done a half-decent job of addressing that topic.
I think so. Gary keeps seeing that ATSC 3.0, or Next Gen TV as they call it, broadcasts use a new Dolby audio codec called AC4. Does that mean AV receivers are going to need to be able to decode a new format? Is it something that could be added to existing AV receivers and soundbars with a firmware update, or are they going to use this as an excuse to make everyone buy new equipment yet again? And if Next Gen TV broadcasts are the only thing using this new codec, they can't possibly expect its use to be popular enough to force everyone to buy new receivers and soundbars, right? So how is it being deployed? I have not gotten that deep in Next Gen TV audio. I've just simply been following its expansion, and the thing that bugs me is DRM.
And
I am just
wasn't originally going to be part of it, but now it is.
But they've done some experiments, and it does screw things up for some people. Some receivers don't do that right, and there is just something viscerally, it's like a toll road. If we make something for the public and there's only one set of airwaves, then it should not have any copy protection on it. I cannot believe that there's going to be some sort of DRM, and so I'm just rejecting that completely. I just got so mad, so I didn't research any further on that. I'd love to get 4K on an antenna, but
Next Gen TV, it is. There's a handful of different audio codecs that are part of the specification. But yes, there is a new one dubbed AC4. Our regular Dolby Digital 5.1 that we've been used to and was part of the specification for ATSC 1.0, our HD TV over-the-air broadcasts, used AC3 audio, which is Dolby Digital 5.1. Exactly. There was also AC3E or AC3 Enhanced, and that was Dolby Digital Plus. So we've been using that codec for most of our streaming services, come across in Dolby Digital Plus. So AC4 is the next one from Dolby. And you might be like, okay, well, when there was AC3, we had Dolby Digital decoders in our AV receivers. When there was AC3E, we ended up with Dolby Digital Plus decoders in our AV receivers. So, will there be something that goes along with AC4? The way it is, and this is the second part of the question, the way it is being deployed and the fact that AC4 is only exclusively showing up in over-the-air broadcasts, ATSC 3.0 Next Gen TV broadcasts, the way that it's being deployed is you have some kind of ATSC 3.0 tuner in your device, whether it's an antenna going directly into a television that has a Next Gen TV tuner built into it, or it's an external antenna box. You plug your antenna into an external box, and that has the Next Gen TV tuner in it. There's some device that has a tuner. The antenna connects to a tuner. Right. And the way that they've drawn up the specification is that tuner device, whether it's the one built into the TV directly or the external box, has the AC4 decoder in it. That's the thing that has the AC4 decoding. it will then re-encode it. It can down-mix it all the way to just your standard stereo output signal, like our televisions do. It can re-encode it as vanilla Dolby Digital 5.1. It can re-encode it as Dolby Digital Plus with Atmos extensions.
How about that?
So the output of whatever next-gen TV tuner you're using is an existing format. It's, stereo uncompressed, or it's Dolby Digital, or it's Dolby Digital Plus. It's coming out that way. But the way it's being transmitted through the airwaves to the antenna is via this new codec AC4. So I won't go so far as to say there will never be an AV receiver in the future that directly decodes whatever brand name they end up giving AC4. I don't know what it'll be, Dolby Digital Next or something. Whatever it is.
Yeah.
Like whatever there's that possibility, because there was a similar scenario when Blu-ray disc came out. When Blu-ray came out, and we had uncompressed PCM was one of the options to be on the disc itself, or Dolby True HD, or DTS HD master audio, or the lossy versions of those, Dolby Digital Plus, or DTS HD high resolution, right? There were all those options for what was on the disc itself, and originally it was envisioned that the player, the Blu-ray disc player, would always fully decode the audio, and it would just send out multi-channel uncompressed PCM via HDMI. That was how it was originally envisioned. But of course, we ended up with players that started just outputting the bit stream. It didn't decode it to multi-channel PCM inside the player, and it output the bit stream, and we ended up with AV receivers doing the decoding. So do I think it's a possibility that there will be next-gen TV tuner boxes that output a bit stream of Dolby AC4, and we end up needing our AV receivers and soundbars to decode AC4 bit streams at some point? I would say it's within the realm of possibility because of the history that happened with the original plans of Blu-ray disc. But as it's deployed right now, and what seems to make sense to me going forward in the future is doing it the way they're doing it now. The tuner decodes that AC4 codec and then puts it into a container of something we're already used to using.
Yeah, it sounds like in the future, maybe receivers will say, oh, we directly decode AC4 as a selling point, even though it makes no difference.
Yeah.
So it'll look like a new thing that it has, but it's nothing to worry about.
It's within the realm of possibility, all right.
But I'm just... I'm not impressed with what's happening with that standard. It's one of those things that gets done in the background that nobody notices. And man, I want that copy protection out of broadcasts. It just doesn't belong there. I even hate that there's multiple channels on one channel because I want all the bit rate.
Yep.
And
multiplexing.
That's awful. Anyway, got a little bit more here. The Hollywood Reporter posted an editorial bemoaning the clear decrease in physical disc availability, with Netflix's DVD.com completely shutting down its disc by mail business, and Best Buy announcing they won't carry DVDs or Blu-rays at all moving forward, not even online. But the author also wondered whether physical media for movies and TV shows will end up following a similar trajectory as physical media for music. Streaming music now accounts for 84% of all music revenue, but that's actually a tiny dip less versus a couple of years ago, as revenue from physical media sales has actually increased recently, with vinyl being the main source of growth, but CDs and even cassette tapes also seeing small increases rather than decreases this year. The author posits that some consumers are noticing the impermanence of streaming, really, and even digital media collections, where the studios and streaming services can yank pieces of content at any time. That's definitely becoming more noticeable with movies and TV shows as well. So could it be that people will also start to turn back to DVDs and Blu-rays? Well, probably not DVDs. At the end of the article, there's one more interesting idea suggested, which is that studios and streamers might purposefully open limited disc windows and market them as buy it on discs now before it leaves your subscription service. Do we think that might happen? Oh, if it makes money, it'll happen. Right. What do we think about that idea and the whole situation in general? Look, I'm torn myself because I like a collection of things. However, I feel like at this point in my life and my age and the year that it is, 2023, I've seen too many format changes. And I don't want to buy things again. And also, it's pretty darn easy to watch. It's definitely too easy to listen to anything in the world. I don't know the last time I'm like, you know what, this streaming is inadequate sound quality. Let's get the FLAC files, or let's get a CD. It's just so convenient,
there literally are songs and albums that have never been readily available through a streaming music or even a downloadable music service.
And the other way around too.
Yeah. Oh yeah. But I mean, there are albums that, like, there was a vinyl record, it existed, and it just never got released in, online form.
So that's the other side of the coin, is that like, I like to collect things, I do, and I know other people do, and I do have a little bit of that doomsday prepper thing in the back of my head where, what if they take it all away?
Yeah.
They keep taking it away.
I think it's pretty difficult to see the future where physical discs for movies and TV shows, like, reverses the current trajectory of things. Like it actually goes back to being the dominant way that we watch content at home. The idea that it's not going to be through the internet, that we're watching the majority of video at home. I find it really difficult to think it's going to reverse. But I do think, over at The Verge, Nilay Patel often says that he thinks the music industry is always like 5 to 10 years ahead of the video industry. Like whatever happens in the music industry is a harbinger of what's going to happen in the video industry, and they're just 5-10 years ahead. And that has proven out pretty realistically, and I think it is that type of thing. I don't think physical movie releases are going to disappear completely. There are too many people who do and will pay a premium to own it in a physical format. Now, I do think it might eventually just become downloads onto hard drives, which is what Kaleidoscape is doing.
Right.
And I could see studios beginning to offer that directly, because at some point, the physical manufacture and storage and distribution, in trucks and ships and stuff like that, of physical media to purchase, at some point that just doesn't make a whole lot of sense, when we could sell you a file that you can download and hold on your own hard drive at home. That gives you some amount of permanence that a streaming version doesn't give you, but it does away with having to have entire factories and physical shipping and that.
That's pseudo permanence. The data migration situation can be difficult to back up your data, and I hope that you're allowed to back up downloads onto something else. That's difficult. I remember being a kid like in the 80s and assuming that in the future, this is after I saw CDs come out, I assumed in the future that an album would be just look like a credit card and have no moving parts.
Right, yeah.
And in a way, you can do that now with a little SSD.
Yeah,
an SSD drive. You can put tons of stuff on there. It's just, again, DRM gets everything a little annoying.
Yeah.
And you just want to be able to back it up in case something happens to your main drive. I need a backup.
Definitely think that movies and TV shows are going to become a similar situation to what music is now. It's, CDs definitely don't sell like they used to before the internet was widespread. Nowhere close, and I don't think DVDs will either. But they have not utterly disappeared. The people who said the CD is completely dead, we'll never sell another one again, that's not true. It's just flatly not true. There are still people buying CDs in the millions. So
look, we're humans. We're collectors. We like to have a shelf of pretty stuff, and it is still better. It's still better. A Blu-ray is. I'm sure there are ways to get a higher quality download, but the Ultra HD Blu-ray situation is still the prettiest way to watch a movie. I think. I think so.
Yeah. It becoming for the diehard fans, for the collectors. Yep, I think that's quite foreseeable.
We'll see how it goes in the future. Let me see. Did I lose my place? No. For movies and TV shows that are shot and fully edited and mastered ahead of time, Gary understands how the video equipment can all be calibrated to the established industry standards, and therefore, it's at least somewhat possible for us to calibrate our displays at home to those same standards to feel confident that we're seeing the images as intended. But what about for live broadcasts, particularly sports? The cameras themselves can be adjusted, right? So someone is doing that, and then there's usually a video production truck on site. What's the calibration situation for the monitors in there? Should our TVs at home be calibrated to whatever they're seeing in the truck? No. I have a friend that does live broadcast in a sports truck, and I really would need him to come on the show.
Okay.
He does more graphics.
Details.
He does a lot of the graphics and the titles and stuff, Chiron stuff. But they know what you have at home, and there is the standard of HD and the standard of 4K HDR, and they know what to calibrate to because you have that at home. So, but they don't always get it right. I've seen
not 100%. No, but I mean, in the truck that's on site, if there is a truck on site, very often it's a satellite uplink going back to a studio somewhere that's doing it. But thankfully, across the entire video industry, if we're using ATSC here in North America, those standards for video have been established and are industry-wide. It's the same that the movies use, it's the same that TV studios use, and it's the same for live broadcast. The monitors in those trucks and the monitors back at the studios, if it was a satellite uplink, are calibrated to the same D65 white point. They're calibrated to the same 120 nits if it's standard dynamic range, or 1000 nits if it's high dynamic range. The colors are calibrated to the same coordinate points on the chromaticity diagram. Like, that is industry-wide. Those are the standards they're using. Live broadcast trucks don't have some kind of make it up on the spot calibration that you have to adjust your TV at home. Thankfully, that standard has been well established and is utilized industry-wide, and you're going to find the same white point, the same color points, the same black and white points on the monitors inside the trucks or in the satellite studio as you would in a professional movie mastering stage, in a mixing stage, on a dubbing stage, and at home if you've calibrated your TV to those same standards.
That's right. So it should work. Sometimes football games look crummy. It's mostly about bit rate.
Sure.
and every now and then
you take your TV out of the box and you go through the various picture modes, and the one labeled sports is not right.
No,
that's
you
not
want
the
Rec
calibrated
709
mode.
boring
Right.
exactly calibrated correctly. That's what you want. Every now and then an individual camera won't be working right at a football game or something.
Oh,
but,
sure.
But no, there's like Rob said, there's a standard all over. So we actually have new questions this week that we can talk
do. Let's see
about
if we
for
get to
maybe
some.
a little while. So here comes a question from Brandon. Brandon has Ascend Acoustics Sierra Raw front, left, and right speakers with a Sierra Horizon Raw center. I like to say it long A's because of the
Those
two
are
A's.
the ribbon tweeters, the true ribbon tweeters from RAL, which is a Serbian company that manufactures ribbon tweeters.
Right. Before he got those, he had Golden Ear speakers all around, and he still has Golden Ear in-wall speakers installed as his surrounds. He'd like to replace those with something that is a closer sonic match to his Ascend front speakers, but he still wants in-wall speakers, and Ascend doesn't make any in-wall models. Based on Ascend's own recommendation, he's strongly leaning towards Sonance in-wall surrounds, but he is hoping to go with a model that uses a physically larger cutout than his Golden Ear in-walls so that he doesn't have to deal with patching any drywall. Over at Best Buy, the Sonance VP62 LCR, $750 a pair, cloth dome tweeter and polypropylene woofers. VP66 LCR, $1,650 a pair, aluminum dome tweeters, Kevlar woofers. VP82, $1,000 a pair, cloth tweeter, polypropylene mid-range and woofer. VP86, $1,725 a pair, aluminum tweeter, Kevlar mid-range and woofer. And the VP88, $3,000 a pair, ceramic tweeter, carbon fiber mid-range and woofer, would all fit the bill physically. Sonance also sells rear enclosures, but the one that would fit the VP82, VP86, or VP88 is a large MDF box, $260 each, that would require quite a large drywall cut and patch job, while the VP62 LCR and VP66 LCR can use a plastic retrofit enclosure, $40 each, that would be very easy and inexpensive to install. So which model would be the best choice for matching his Ascend front speakers? Are the more expensive models worth it, and do any of these models regularly go on sale at Best Buy, and if so, when? And before we get to answering all that, he is also looking for wedge-shaped speakers to replace his current on-wall Golden Ear Atmos speakers. His Atmos speakers need to be mounted on an 8-inch beam on his ceiling, and he would really prefer if they're white. That had him looking at Kef and Arundel, but is there an option he's missing? Is that Arundel or Arundel? Arundel.
I don't actually know.
Arundel.
I usually say Arundel, but I don't know if I'm correct.
My brain just separated it differently. Arundel, yes. But is there an option he's missing? Perhaps some way for his Ascend Sierra Raw fronts, new in-wall surrounds, and on-wall overhead speakers to all match as closely as possible. Now, just by the length of that question, my brain is already saying, that's too much trouble. Keep what you have.
Well, I mean...
Does it really have that bad of a match to go through this much trouble?
Yeah, so I mean, this going back to the whole, compare two things, there's probably less of a difference than you actually think about, but... That all said, I mean, I've said before, and I will stand by it, there are instances where you can repeatedly, reliably, in a blind comparison, tell two things apart. And then you can be pretty confident that in a rigorous comparison that is done that way, that there really is a difference there. I'm not saying there's never an actual difference between two things. It's just that we don't start with the assumption that there's a difference. We start with the assumption that there isn't, and then we find a lot of compelling evidence that there really is a difference, and then we feel pretty confident that there really truly is.
Does that mostly come down to tweeter characteristics? It's usually the high frequencies that
it's the frequency response in general. I mean, Harman's whole research into all of this, into the perception and preference of speakers, is that yes, the on-axis frequency response plays a large role, as does the off-axis frequency response, and how all of that interacts to create the whole family of curves, throughout the entire dispersion of the speaker. That really does matter, and that when you stray from quite linear on and off-axis frequency response, very linear and just gradually rolling off as you go off axis type of measurements, that you can very readily notice the difference, and that we tend to prefer speakers that more or less tell it like it is, play a pretty flat frequency response on axis and then have very uniform and only gradually rolling off frequency response as you move further and further off axis. So the golden ear speakers, they have never attempted to be very flat linear response. They have been very open with the fact that they have their own characteristic sound. It is an identifiable golden ear sound. The frequency response has humps and dips in it on purpose. They match really well across the entire golden ear line of speakers. Golden ear speakers match really, really well with other golden ear speakers, but I will stand by saying I can reliably tell golden ear speakers apart from very, very linear speakers like Ascend's, Sierra RAL speakers. And therefore, I don't think he's nuts for saying that, he might want to change the speakers out here and have something that sonically matches a little bit more closely. So I'm
just lazy and cheap. That's all.
Oh, sure. Yeah. No, I mean, it's not like he's suffering with no sound at all, but, just to put that part aside based on what we were talking about before. So I would point you to some speakers that you didn't mention, which are Aperian's Theatris speakers. Now, honestly, these don't look worlds different from your golden ears. These use a folded ribbon tweeter, just like your golden ear speakers do. But the overall frequency response of Aperian speakers tends closer towards just a very flat, linear, even dispersion type of response, much like Ascend speakers do. I would say, okay, blind comparison, maybe you could tell a difference between Ascend and Aperian head-to-head used as front, left, right speakers and that, but my opinion is that these are a closer match, and I think it's very close to what you're looking for. So they have a model, the T63W in-wall. One thing I love about the Theatris series from Aperian is they are fully sealed in-wall speakers. There's no separate enclosure. There's no option to get them without a back enclosure. They just come as a fully sealed speaker ready to go in your wall and attach with the dog ear clips like most in-walls do. The T63W has the sort of physical size you were talking about, where it would either slot right into what you already have, or you would actually require cutting a slightly larger hole, but no patches would be necessary with that one. It's three-way design, dedicated mid-range driver, and that folded ribbon tweeter. Now, I would say for the wedge-shaped speakers, in that Theatris line, they have their TC65, which is a wedge-shaped version of the Theatris speaker, but it is only available in black. It doesn't have what you were talking about where it's available in a white finish. Aperian does sell a white finish wedge-shaped speaker in their Novus series, the Novus A5 Atmos module. So those go for $550 a pair in the white finish in the Novus series. The TC65s in the Theatris series are $1,000 for a pair. And then that T63W in-wall is $800 each. Now, these are not wildly different prices from the things that you were considering. So I don't think price-wise these are going to turn you away. But just the black color of the TC65s might not be what you want. Overhead speakers, those are ones where I would argue as long as the speakers are anywhere near, competent, that they aren't literally just truly awful speakers, that it's going to be good enough as a sonic match. So I wouldn't feel too bad about taking those Novus A5s, which do not use the folded ribbon tweeter. They use a dome tweeter, and they're in a completely different series from AVRant, but still targeting a pretty darn neutral, flat response coming out of those things. So as overheads, I wouldn't have too much problem going with those. That could save you some money. It gets you the white finish. So those are the ones I would point you to. I think you would be quite happy with those. And AVRant is quite easy to work with and return speakers if it turns out to not be exactly what you were looking for. So maybe you just start with that $550 pair of the Novus A5s, which would be very easy to return if they don't meet your needs. And that would at least give you a taste of whether AVRant is the right track for you.
Whether that type of tweeter matches what you're used to with the Golden Ear.
Yeah.
Is that what we're getting at? Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Let's move on to Sasi. Sasi recently moved and finally has a dedicated space in which to set up a home theater. Great. Previously, it was just a living room setup with placement and acoustic compromises, but now the speaker placement and acoustic treatment can be as ideal as possible. Nice. One stumbling block is that there's a sliding glass door on the back wall. The backs of the seats will be about 3 feet from that back wall and sliding glass door. And a quick listen seems to indicate that if the glass door is left completely bare, there does seem to be a bit of reverb and noticeable reflection in this room. Yes. What can be done to acoustically treat the glass door on the back wall? Sasi came across another home theater podcast that was talking about Screen Innovation's roller blinds, and they were saying they could cut down the amount of reflections in the room, but they appear to just be regular window blind fabric, a fraction of an inch thick. So could they really provide any acoustical absorption whatsoever? There's no way to mount regular acoustic panels on the glass door, so are heavy curtains the only option? There's nothing wrong with heavy curtains. And big, thick, velvety, heavy curtains make a huge difference.
And if we are talking about the vocal range, if we're talking about dialogue intelligibility, then thick, heavy curtains that are hanging in front of that glass door, and you can draw those. And you would want to have it so like when they're drawn, they're still heavily pleated, right?
Yes,
so that they're
bunch them up a lot. Yeah.
Up. Right, so you're gonna have a lot more width of fabric material than just the width of the glass door.
I don't know why it's like a decorating pet peeve of mine when people have like one panel of curtain and it's barely wavy at all, and they've stretched it out.
The width.
What are you doing? They just measured and went, "Oh, it's the right size."
Yeah, you measured the width and got the same width of material, and now there are no pleats and there are no bunches. But you would want lots and lots of pleats and bunches. You'd want 4 times the width of the door in fabric width.
A very strong mount, not just into the drywall, and then you want that center hook to hold the middle of the curtain rod that's holding all these heavy curtains.
Now, that would not be an ideal acoustic absorber. It will not be a bass trap. It won't be all the things we would do if you had a fully bespoke room and you could build it from the ground up in your back wall. We would treat a little bit differently than a nice, thick, heavily pleated curtain. But for the vocal range, for dialogue intelligibility, which is the number one concern,
that's the main thing.
With that bounce off the wall directly behind you, it will have an audible impact in that frequency range and can be enough and isn't going to look out of place, right? There is a curtain that can be drawn over the glass door that makes perfect sense in every decorating world, and that isn't going to be an issue. So that is a completely reasonable solution. With the whole roller blinds thing, I mean, no, they aren't doing anything acoustically, and I think maybe they were just talking about light reflections, not audio reflections. I didn't hear what he was talking about in this other home theater podcast, but I'm like, if you just use the word reflections, that could mean light instead of audio. I don't know how things were worded. Maybe they were talking about both things simultaneously and it all just got jumbled up a little bit. So, but no, acoustically, no, those aren't doing a thing. I would not go with roller blinds that come stretched down and are completely flat fabric that's, a 32nd of an inch thick. That's not going to do anything acoustically. So the heavy curtains are a solution. The other potential solution for you here is to get a freestanding panel, or more than one panel, honestly, because it sounds like this is wider than just a single glass door. So GIC Acoustics, they have freestanding panels. You can get feet that just go on their regular 4-foot tall panels, and that might be enough because you really just need the panels to get up to your head height.
Right, a little higher than your head, yeah.
You might just buy one, a few of their normal 4-foot tall panels and add the wooden feet that cost, $19 for each panel to add the feet to it. Or they have the not quite 6 feet tall panels that are already freestanding. And so those look, like basically a full wall covering behind you. But those are available options. And then Acoustimac also has a selection of freestanding, like they call them their vocal booths. It's kind of like a V-shaped thing and stands up that way. You can also get images printed on those. So there's a way that you could make this decoration on your back wall if you want it to. But both of these are fairly easy to move out of the way. Like obviously you still want to get to the door and you'd be moving these freestanding panels out of the way when it's time to do that. But they don't have to be crazy heavy. They don't have to be, completely unwieldy. But if you don't want anything at all that you're, walking out of the way when it's time to get to the door, then the curtain solution makes sense too. And
what I'm picturing?
One of those.
I'm picturing, the barn doors that have been really trendy for the past decade or so. You could have a sliding left to right barn door in front of the sliding glass door and just make those doors into panels.
I see.
Just make them into acoustic, put a bunch of padding on them and a nice fabric around them and just have it slide. So it'd be a permanent installation, sort of, but it would slide. If you have enough room on either side of the sliding glass door.
It's like 2 sets of doors.
Just something like that. Just don't overthink it. You just need to absorb those frequencies that Rob was talking about in the vocal range and higher.
But not blinds. Blinds wouldn't do it.
No, would not do it. Sasi was able to score a really great deal on a Denon A1H flagship receiver, so the option is there to expand to a full 9.4.6 configuration. Sasi is under the impression that we are not huge fans of front wides. What? Have you not listened to Rob?
I know. I'm like the one person who talks about front wides.
You are talking to Captain Front Wide here.
I have front wides. I really don't need them in my teeny tiny room, but I like them. So maybe Tom kind of poo-poos the front wides, but he's just jealous. So
that's what it is. It's just jealousy.
It's gotta be.
With an extra pair of Kef Q350 bookshelf speakers on hand, trying out the addition of front wides seems fun. Yeah, trying is free. But if they're going to stay, they can't take up any floor space or stick out into the room too much. And of course, they'd need to be angled at the seats. So with some decent woodworking skills, what do we think about removing all of the Kef Q350's components and building a custom slim speaker cabinet with the perfect angle built in so that the Uniq drivers could be as close to flush with the wall as possible while still being properly aimed at the listeners? The Kef Q350s already come with optional port plugs, so making a sealed enclosure seems like a possibility. Does the internal volume of the enclosure just need to remain the same, or are there any other considerations? You will inevitably change the sound characteristics of that speaker.
Yeah, but
at least some. But that's not a crazy idea.
Yeah, no, it doesn't have to be out of this world changes. You would want to make sure the internal volume of the original cabinet ends up the same as your new DIY cabinet. You would want to stuff the inside of the new cabinet that you're making with, Dacron or, polyfill, some kind of insulation fibrous fill inside of there to reduce internal cabinet resonance. It is okay to turn this into a sealed speaker. They do have the ability to run in a sealed mode, so you can optionally run them ported or sealed. So this is not out of the question to do this. I would say, even as a fan of front wides, this sounds like a whole lot more trouble than it's worth. Not adding front wides to your system. I have no problem with you taking a pair of already owned Q350s, putting them on some stands, or what I really think you should do is just install some nice little shelves on your side walls where the front wides go, and your Q350s sit on those shelves.
Just sit right
and
there.
It's not weird. Right? That's my real number one recommendation to you. But if you're dead set on using your woodworking skills to do this project, I'm not against it. But do be very careful that the internal volume of your new cabinets really does match, and make sure that you fill it with insulation to reduce that internal resonance.
I got to be honest, I kind of want him to do it just so he can send us pictures and tell us all about it. Entertain me with this.
My real recommendation is use your woodworking skills, a minimal amount of them, to install some shelves. That's my real recommendation.
Sure. And my recommendation is entertain me with this wacky idea you have. I kind of like it. Let's move on to John. John has a bit of a puzzling situation. He's a fan of using balanced headphones, and he has a shit Audio Magnus balanced headphone amp that can supply up to 6 watts of power. I like to slowly pronounce the double I in
it is double I,
shit, because I don't want any detection on YouTube to have a problem.
SCHIIT. It's a real place. It's a real word.
skit. So there shouldn't be any issue with getting to very, very loud listening levels, right?
Yeah, 6 watts for a headphone amp is ridiculous. So.
Yeah, that'll blow your brain out. He's got a Grace Design balanced DAC and a Lokius 6-band balanced tone control as well. Everything uses XLR connections. With his music sources, everything is great, but when switching to his streaming video from his PC, things get way, way quieter. And he can't even reach the volume level he would prefer. Does he need to switch out his DAC to something with a higher volume level output? Or what could be going on here, since his music sources and headphones seem to all work perfectly fine? Something's going on with what you're feeding this thing. I don't know what.
Yeah. So, I mean, the DAC that he has a USB input. He's going USB from his PC to that DAC. There shouldn't be any issue there. Right. How that could be. So about the only thing I could come up with is you do need to be kind of careful with XLR cables, because XLR cables, they have the 3 pins in there, and not all XLR cables are wired the same. In some of them, pin 1 on one end is wired to pin 1 on the other, pin 2 to pin 2, pin 3 to pin 3, but on some, pin 1 is wired to pin 2, and pin 2 is wired to pin 3, and pin 3 is wired to pin 1, and so on. You can go the entire, all permutations are available. For example, microphone cables have an XLR plug on either end, but they are internally wired differently from the XLR cable you would use from a preamplifier to an amplifier. So I'm wondering if one of his sources simply has the wrong type of XLR cable internal connection, because you have in the manual they will show you the pin connections, what XLR pin is supposed to go to what XLR pin on the other end, and you got to make sure you get the cables that match that, because otherwise you can have the ground connection going to one of the signal connections, and all of a sudden you get no audio coming out, which is kind of what this sounds like, because there's no other real explanation for what's going on. You
know how we regularly suggest things like check your speaker cable stuff, check the volume levels of things in Windows. If this is a Windows PC, you say PC, because sometimes individual programs will have different volume levels.
Absolutely, yeah.
So you could just have whatever your streaming video program you're using could just be too low in Windows.
Yeah, like an easy example is you have the VLC software playing back a video that you've got stored on your hard drive. Right. So there's the Windows volume level, and that's the USB digital output level, but then VLC has its own volume just in that software, and that might be coming out at 40% or something like that.
That could very well be it. I'm betting that's the number one choice there, because it's a PC. So try that. Double check all those levels. Load the mixer.
Agreed.
So we now are moving on to Karl, different
yes.
Karl. Is Black Friday the right time to pounce on a 77-inch LG G3 OLED? This question really is, can I buy an OLED now? Buy it! He's been price watching, and there are definitely some deals to be had on the G3 series. But if buying a new OLED TV isn't urgent right now, are there some good reasons to continue waiting? Rob said he intends to get a 77-inch G3, right? Will he be buying soon? Here's somebody wanting to know if it's okay to buy a TV. It's kind of always okay to buy a TV. Everything will always get a little cheaper. But how long do you want to wait?
Sure, yeah. If you've been waiting and you could really use a 77-inch TV at this time, Black Friday is going to be a good time to get a G3. Will there be a point in the future when the G4 exists, the G3 are on final clearance, and it's even $100 cheaper than it was on Black Friday? Yeah, maybe. That usually happens. That usually does take place. So, I mean, if this is purely about waiting until the absolute lowest price possible, then Black Friday usually isn't quite it. There usually is, at some point, an even slightly lower price. But it is a good time to buy. If you've been waiting on it, I would go for it. Will I personally be going for it? I will answer truthfully, which is no. I do still intend to get one, but I've waited this long. I still have my 75-inch, Z9D. It's not like I'm suffering without a very nice television to look at. And I am just curious to see at CES in January, since it's not that long away, whether like the C4 series will get the micro lens array that the G3 series introduced this year. Whether an 83-inch size might get micro lens array, which seems fairly reasonable to expect in the following year. So I'm just kind of waiting and seeing a little bit. I am very curious to see what Samsung will do with their third generation of quantum dot OLEDs, because if they add micro lens array to that, then that might be a really compelling thing. So, I mean, I'm falling into I might end up waiting longer than I kind of wanted to, but that's because I already have a really good perfectly sized TV for my room to look at. If I didn't already have that Z9D, I would be pouncing right now. So if that's your situation, you don't already have the size and quality of TV that you want, then I would go ahead and pounce right now, because the G3 is going to remain a fantastic looking TV for years and years and years to come. But if you've already got one and this is just a matter of, I want the latest and greatest, then if, like me, if you've waited this long, you can probably wait till CES to see what happens. There's always more sales at Super Bowl time in February, always. So that could be the next opportunity.
But yeah, if you need it, get it.
Yeah.
Mike H has a question. Is it really necessary to do the mirror trick to find the first reflection points on your sidewalls for placing acoustic treatments? What if you just start by putting bass traps in your corners and then just hang a panel every couple of feet along your sidewalls in whatever way looks the nicest? Hey, design and the look of things is something we have to take into account.
Absolutely.
And
so just to explain the mirror trick, if anyone might not be familiar with it, this is you sit in your primary seat and you have a friend or a partner take a hand mirror and hold that hand mirror flat against your left side wall and then over on your right side wall. And you're going to have them walk forward and backward with the mirror held flat against the side wall until you can see the reflection of your front left speaker in the mirror on the left wall and the front right speaker in the mirror on the right side wall. And that will be your first reflection point. The sound is bouncing like a billiard ball off of the side of a pool table. Angle of incidence in equals angle out. So the mirror trick is doing just that visually. Now, if you're like, I don't want to bring a friend over to do this and there's no way I can really do it myself, you could just pencil up an accurate diagram of your room and just use a protractor and get the angles that way. It doesn't have to be a mirror. You don't have to do it physically. You can do it with some really, really basic geometry. So that could be another way for you to figure it out if you want to. What I will say is if you just go by, I'm going to put panels where I think they look nicest, I'm not going to care too much about specific placement, what that will do is a perfectly fine job of bringing the overall decay times in your room down. It will bring your RT60 times, the time that it takes for the reverberation to decay by 60 decibels, which is the thing we normally measure in a program like Room EQ Wizard. It will bring those times down in a general sense. What it won't do so much necessarily is address a specific reflection off of a hard, flat surface like a first reflection point. So if you are in a small, hard, reflective room and you are putting in a minimal amount of treatments, right? Like you've got a hard floor, you got hard ceiling and walls, everything is flat and acoustically reflective, and you're only going for 10% coverage of the surface areas in your room. You're going for the bare minimum. I would probably want to take the time to figure out where my actual first reflection points are in that scenario so that I'm addressing those strong specific reflections. But if you've got fully carpeted room, bunch of plush furniture, maybe it's a slightly irregularly shaped room, not everything is hard and acoustically reflective, and you're putting a whole bunch of soft squishy things into this room, you're going to cover 30% of the surfaces, total surface area in here, then I don't care so much. Just addressing the overall decay times is going to be perfectly fine. So those are sort of the two extremes.
Also, since he says he's hanging something every couple of feet, it must be a pretty deep room.
Yeah.
If it's more than just a couple of panels he's talking about hanging. So, it'd probably be fine.
Yeah, so basically the smaller the ratio of absorptive stuff in your room to reflective stuff, the less absorptive stuff you have in your room versus hard reflective things, the more important it is to get the correct placement, the specific placement to address the strongest, most direct reflections. So the more you get to a higher ratio of soft, absorptive, squishy things in your room versus hard reflective things, the less important it is to care about exactly where those soft, squishy things go.
There we go. Moving on, another question from Mohsen. Mohsen has a dedicated home theater room. It's about 15.5 by 19 by 8.5 feet. It's pretty darn close to completely blacked out, and he sends a photo that just looks really cool. That's a cool looking.
That is a theater. It's hard to say that room is anything other than a theater.
That is a good-looking, room. He's just in the mood to upgrade his home theater and add to it, and he was hoping to do something on the audio side. All right, someone's in the mood. Let's go for it. On the video side of things, he's using a WeMax A300 Ultra short-throw projector with a 120-inch ambient light-rejecting screen. His audio setup is a Yamaha RXV 2085 receiver that tops out at a 9-speaker configuration with Klipsch reference Premier speakers all around in a 5.2.4 setup, using dual SVS PB3000 subs, both at the front of the room. This sounds nice. He was thinking he might like to get an Anthem MRX 1140, which has 11 amps built in and can expand to 15 speakers. Woo! But at around $4,000, it's over his current budget. So he's in the mood to buy. Not that big a move.
Not quite that much.
Not much. So what about going with Tone Winner's AT300, so-called 16-channel Pre-Pro, which can actually process 13 speakers and then has 3 subwoofer outputs that aren't actually independent. It's remarkably affordable, and you can get it in a nice bundle with some Tone Winner amplifiers for $3,000. Phew, that's remarkably affordable, huh? Or, what? I mean, in my world, that's not remarkable. That's
It is less than 4,000 though.
It's less than 4,000, and that's a thing I'd have to save up. Or what about simply adding a 7-channel Tone Winner amp to his current Yamaha AV receiver?
I will say absolutely no to that one. You have Klipsch reference Premier speakers in a room size that is not outlandish. There is no chance I'm going to tell you to just get a separate amplifier. That's not going to be a worthwhile upgrade.
Nah, not at all. He's also thought of maybe replacing his Yamaha with the Onkyo TX RZ70 for $2,800, which tops out at 11 speakers, but can optionally be upgraded to use direct live bass control. What do we think he should do? He'd appreciate our thoughts on any and all of it. Help him spend his money, Rob.
Yeah.
But not too much. Not too much.
First things first, and I know Tom would point this out right away, something that doesn't cost you any money, but might cost you a little bit of time and some adjustment. But if you're looking for, I could actually make an audible difference in this theater and not spend any money, we would have you physically move one of your PB3000 subwoofers. Keep one of them at the front of your room and move the second one to somewhere at the back of your room. I'm looking back at where things are, and I'm like, one of those tables that's beside either row of your seats that you got back there, that could be a subwoofer. You could use the top of the subwoofer in place of the tabletop that's back there, and that could work out pretty darn well, it would look like, because you've got one that's like on the back wall but slightly to the right side of the seats. So I would keep the first subwoofer at the front of the room and slightly to the left of your center channel, and now they are diagonally across the room from each other, and that doesn't cost you any money, but it could cost you some time in doing the full setup and calibration of the two subwoofers, and that's something that we would recommend that you try.
That might very well even out the bass response across all your seating, so that's definitely worth it.
Yeah, and that didn't cost any money. Now, as far as the speaker configuration, I like what you have. I like a 5.2.4 in here, because the seating arrangement that you have, like the front and back rows, the back row definitely looks like kind of like overflow seating, right? It doesn't look like that's the primary row. How much you would benefit from going to 6 overhead speakers, really, really questionable to me. I think you've got a really good experience going with the 4 overhead speakers, and then you don't really have room behind that back row to add surround back speakers. If that back row really doesn't matter, then I suppose you could have surround backs that, only the front row is kind of enjoying, and they're mostly there to annoy and distract the back row. But I don't know if you really want to do that. You've got really good placement of your surround speakers right now. They're giving you the sense that sounds are fully behind you when you're in the primary front row of seats. So the only speakers I might consider adding, I mean, if you went to 6 overhead speakers on a lark, I wouldn't tell you, no, you can't do that. It's your theater. You could try that. But you know what? You could do front wides in this theater.
Hey,
you've got the dedicated space in here, that is a possibility. So I think that might be kind of fun. I would move one of the subwoofers. I would consider that if you're going to make a change, that trying front wides might be nice. That means I've just eliminated the Onkyo RZ70 as an option, because it doesn't support front wides. And I don't really think that's a big enough change over what you've already got that's the way I would necessarily spend your money. I wouldn't point you towards the Tone Winner Pre-Pro. Even though it can go up to 13 speakers, it would give you the ability to add front wides. It has a very limited onboard auto correction system. It doesn't have anything that's remotely close to the sophistication of Dirac or Odyssey Multi-Q XT32. So I think where I would point you, you've got a projector that, definitely is not going to be doing 4K 120 and VRR like all the latest HDMI 2.1 stuff. So I would be pretty happy in your case going with the outgoing at this point, Denon X6700H, which is they're selling it off directly from Denon for $2,000 these days. So that, given what else you talked about, should be within your budget range. Right. It's definitely under $4,000. And you can get that model from accessories for less for $1,500 these days, the X6700H. Pretty darn affordable, can process 13 speakers and can power 11 of them. And one nice thing is, in many other AV receivers that can go beyond 11 speakers, if you want to add the 6 overheads or you want to add the front wides, they demand that you have surround backs. You have to have 7 floor level speakers before you can add anything else. There's no other way to configure it. Denon doesn't make you do that. Denon says, yeah, you can have 5 floor level speakers and then add front wides without adding surround backs.
Okay,
or you can have 6 overhead speakers and 5 on the floor. Like, they let you configure it whatever way you want. So I would point you to the X6700H. That's, I think, the right choice for the budget and to give you some abilities that you don't have with your current equipment, some stuff to genuinely play around with and change the setup of your system. There is, of course, the brand new X6800H, which isn't quite available yet. It's probably coming out in February, March timeframe. It's going to be priced at $3,500, so it's closer to that $4,000 mark. I don't know if you want to get it right away. The only reasons you would get that is if you want to go to 4 subwoofers instead of just 2. Or if you are really dead set on spending another $500 on top of that, getting to $4,000 and adding to rack instead of using Odyssey Multi-Q XD32. But I think the way for you to go right now, if you're itching to buy something, I'd grab an X6700H. They're at a great price, and you can actually do something new and different in your system that you weren't able to do before.
Yeah, there you go. New stuff to play with. That sounds good. Let's see. We got another question here from Trevor. Trevor would like to add some more storage space to his PS5. Can he just add an external USB hard drive? If so, which one should he get? Or if he needs something else, what should he buy? It would be easiest for him if he could get it from Best Buy. He's using a Sony X90J TV. And
that's a second question, so we can answer that first.
I'm just blowing right on through questions, aren't I?
No problem at all.
All right, so what kind of external storage can he get at Best
this
Buy?
does need a little bit of clarification, because the PlayStation 5, built into it, the storage that's built into it is super duper fast solid state storage, exceedingly fast. And I think there's 825 or 850 gigabytes or something like that. And they're not quite a terabyte is what's built into the system. If you are playing PlayStation 5 games, they have to be installed on memory that is as fast as that built-in solid state storage. Now, behind one of the removable white side panels on the PlayStation 5, you can just push up on that panel and it pops off. In there is an expansion bay for a solid state hard drive. Now, it has to be like a M.2 NVMe solid state hard drive. So it's like the little stick type hard drive.
Yeah, little gumstick hard drive. I mean, gumstick drives, yes.
That's the type that you have to install, and it has to be up to the speed specifications, because not all M.2 shaped hard drives are up to the speed level that the PlayStation 5 requires. But it is necessary if you are playing PlayStation 5 games off of the expanded storage that you're adding. It has to be an installed M.2 SSD that you put into that expansion slot. So happily, you wanted to buy from Best Buy anyway, and they make it really easy. They have a whole section that are PS5 approved hard drives.
Oh, well, there you go.
And you would want to go over to the left side and check the internal if this is what you want to do, and they'll have the ones that are ready to work. The PS5 strongly recommends you get one of those M.2 SSDs with a heatsink on it, and so all of the ones that Best Buy sells in that section have that and meet the specification needs. You can get 2 terabytes for right around $100 these days.
God, it's getting so cheap. It's wonderful.
It's so nice. And those are like Black Friday sale prices, like between $100 and $150, you can get 2 terabytes. So that's the butter zone, because it's like only $20 less to get 1 terabyte. And then it's like over $200 to get 4 terabytes. So that 2 terabyte size is like the butter zone right now. Really, really good deal. Now, you can plug any external USB hard drive into the PlayStation 5. If you do that, you can transfer PlayStation 5 games from the internal or that M.2 storage to the USB hard drive, but you can't play the games from the USB hard drive. The PlayStation 5 games have to be on the very fast solid-state storage to work on the PlayStation 5. The external USB hard drive is not going to be fast enough. So you can store them there. You can like offload them for storage space. But if you want to play a game that's on that USB hard drive, you have to transfer it back onto the solid-state drive. So if what you want is the convenience of being able to just store more games on your PS5 and play them whenever you want, get one of the M.2 drives for sure. You can also play PlayStation 4 games, backwards compatible PlayStation 4 games, directly off of a USB hard drive. The PlayStation 4 didn't demand the super fast solid state drives, but I think what he wants is, I'm running out of space to store PS5 games. I want to store more and play more at a whim. So I would point you to a 2 terabyte M.2 drive, and Best Buy is a great place to buy it. They have them all organized for you and ready to go.
Am I correct that the PS5 can't play PS3 older games unless they're like online or something weird like that?
It's not backwards compatible. That has to be done through the streaming service.
That's very frustrating. I miss Rock Band. I have a PS3 where the video output died, the HDMI video output, and it's so frustrating. I miss it. I used to love that so much. I want it to come back. You can tell it's working. It just doesn't have video output. So if anybody knows a way around that, let me know. He's using a Sony X90J TV and a Denon X4200W receiver. He connected his PS5 directly to the TV and then uses HDMI ARC to send the audio to the receiver from the TV. Is that the best way? Should he leave it hooked up like that? Or should he plug the PS5 into the Denon? So what's going to be the difference between those two ways of doing it?
Yes, indeed. Yeah, so this is a case of, okay, what can the PlayStation 5 output maximally, video and audio-wise? What can your Sony X90J television do maximally, video and audio-wise? Then what can your X4200W receiver do, and which is the sort of bottleneck, right? Okay. So your PlayStation 5 can output up to 4K resolution at 120 frames per second with variable refresh rate and HDR. They can do all of those things, and it can output lossless multi-channel audio, including Dolby Atmos now. It couldn't when it launched, but there was an update, and now it can output Dolby Atmos audio. So those are all the things that your PlayStation 5 can output. Your Sony X90J, if you plug your PlayStation 5 directly into the television, can do all of those things. It can do 4K 120, VRR, HDR, Dolby Atmos. Your X4200W receiver cannot do all the things. Okay. It tops out at 4K 60. It cannot go to 4K 120. It cannot do variable refresh rate at all. You would not be able to have variable refresh rate. So the only thing it's going to be doing is the Dolby Atmos audio, the multi-channel lossless audio. So if you want the maximum video performance from your video game system up to 4K 120 with variable refresh rate, then you want to plug your PlayStation 5 directly into your X90J. Now that will mean you're not getting the multi-channel lossless audio going through the television and then via HDMI ARC to the X4200W. Because the X4200W is also old enough it doesn't have eARC. It just has regular ARC.
Okay.
But you'll be getting 5.1 audio coming through that ARC connection. Still sounds great. Still works great. And if you want to max out what your PS5 can do, video games, usually we do care about like frame rate and that beyond the audio a little bit more. So I would plug your PS5 directly into your X90J. That's the correct way to do it in this case.
Kind of sounds like he might be inching toward a new receiver, or at least
one day. One day
might want to.
But for now.
But for now, it's going to work fine. His front 3 speakers are SVS Prime bookshelves and Prime Center. He's decided he'd like to upgrade to the SVS Ultra series. He sits about 10 feet away. He was pretty much all set to order the Ultra bookshelves and Ultra Center, but then everybody, quote unquote, everybody online kept telling him to go with the Prime Pinnacle Towers for his front left and right speakers instead. Would those really be the better buy? He does like to listen loud, but he wants the best sound quality. Are all the online people, like they're aliens from another planet, they seem that way sometimes, are all the online people just saying to get the Prime Pinnacle Towers because they're bigger and can play lower? Kind of.
Yeah, pretty much. Pretty much. I don't agree with them. There are scenarios where I would say that is the correct choice. Not in yours. Sitting 10 feet away, you do not need the extra output capabilities. And to set your mind further at ease, the Prime Pinnacle Towers still use the Prime series tweeter.
Okay.
Now, you already had SVS Prime Series speakers. You already know what the treble sounds like on your speakers. And I would imagine one of the reasons you're strongly considering upgrading to the Ultra Series is to get the Ultra Series tweeter, which is the upgrade that Tom appreciated most, going from Prime to Ultra in his SVS system. It's what I think is probably worth the most. And sitting 10 feet away, those Ultra bookshelves can get loud. They are very capable bookshelf speakers. And you were sitting pretty close. You are not sitting far enough away that you need the added output capability of a tower speaker. Absolutely no way. So I proclaim that the Ultra bookshelf is the correct choice in your scenario, and I think the very reason you're doing it is much in part to that tweeter upgrade, and you wouldn't want to give up on that and stick with the Prime Series tweeters. So get the Ultra bookshelves. That would be AVRant's choice. I cannot envision Tom saying a different answer.
Right, and remember, Rob just proclaimed that.
That's right.
So that's a high-level recommendation when he proclaimed. It's a proclamation from Rob.
Now, another proclamation I'm going to make is that Greg actually asked a question that I would love to get Tom's input on, and I am running out of time.
Sounds
so I'm
like
going to
we can
call an
stop
audible here and say, can we skip down to Dan? Because Dan's is pretty quick, and it would be the final question there. And so I will say, Greg, you will be first up next week, and hopefully Tom will be back because I would love to get his input on one of the things that you asked about.
Don't worry, Greg. We're skipping you this week because you're important. They
That's
want to spend more time with it. Yes, let's move on to Dan real quick, and then we'll get both of us out of here to go do other things. Dan came across Jamo's Studio 8 series of affordable speakers. At their surprisingly low price point, he doesn't think he's seen nicer looking speakers with their black, white, and walnut finish options, wood trim around the tweeters. Crutchfield carries the whole lineup with centers going for $100 and $130, bookshelf pairs at $120 and $150, and tower pairs at $200 and $400. So, are they any good? Are they a tremendous value with looks that are a cut above, or do they look nice but sound like trash? He'd love to get our thoughts. I doubt they sound like trash. You have any more proclamations on Jamo's Studio 8 series? He sure does like how they look.
Yeah, and you know what? So do I.
Yeah.
And it is absolutely a case. Of course, this is one man's opinion. This is my opinion of them. I wish with all my heart that I could give a full, wholehearted recommendation. There's no qualms whatsoever. I absolutely wish, because the price points are really attractive. I think they've done a wonderful job on the finish and the looks of these speakers. It is really hard to find speakers that affordable, that look this nice. I'm in complete agreement. And there's many situations where I'm like, somebody's got a budget. It's not a very large budget. They want to get a nice 5 or 7 speaker system, but they do have aesthetic concerns. And I'm like, man, those Jamo S Studio 8 series speakers are like right up the alley. Now, do they sound like trash? No. I'm going to flat out say they do not sound like trash. They are not bad speakers.
Okay, all right.
But they're not great speakers.
The
issue I have with them is they're really quite similar to the low-priced Klipsch type of sound. They can get a bit harsh and get a bit fatiguing. They're definitely a bit bright. They have a quite noticeable and measurable, objectively measurable and demonstrable V-shaped frequency response, where the mid-bass has been artificially boosted up and the treble response has been boosted up to give that detailed, crisp sound in the treble frequencies and that artificial warmth sound in the mid bass, with a bit of a scoop down in the mid-range sound there. And it's
classic boom sizzle.
Boom sizzle. It's quite noticeable, and it's not my favorite sound. You can EQ these speakers. You can apply equalization to them to tame down the treble to even out the mid bass. If you do that, though, then you can't boost the mid-range a ton. You will end up quieting them down. And they are not inefficient speakers, but they're not extremely efficient speakers either. So unlike the low-priced Klipsch reference series, for example, where you can tame down their treble a whole bunch and they still play plenty loud, the Jamo speakers, if you tamed them right down to be very linear and neutral, would be on the quieter side at that point. If you're sitting close, not going to be a problem, but if you're sitting far away, it starts to become a little bit of an issue. So I can't like wholehearted gusto say, yeah, I love these speakers. They're my favorite. I have some quibbles with them. I don't think they're exactly the sound signature that I'm looking for, and correcting them with equalization is not a foolproof solution in every scenario. But they are not the type of speaker where if somebody got them, I'd like hang my head and like, you know, be ashamed on their behalf that they got them, because they're not trash at all. And if you actually like that, like Lee said, boom sizzle sound, the tipped up treble, the tipped up mid-range. And a lot of people do. A lot of people like that sound. There's a gazillion headphones with that sound that are selling like hotcakes, and people like that sound. So this could work out swimmingly if you already like that type of sound profile. Could work out really nicely for you. And overall, they are not bad speakers. I definitely don't put them in that category, but they're not my favorite. So it's kind of, I'm trying to thread that needle, but I'm trying to give an honest honest take on what I think about them. And yeah, I think that's a fair take, and that's what I would say about them.
So if you don't have anything, or if you do have trash speakers, this would be better.
Oh, they're better than that.
They're better than that, right?
If you're sitting close, you can EQ them to be pretty darn good. Not going to be an issue. And yeah, the looks and the price are really, really attractive. So,
but just know you can get better sound than these.
But it will cost more.
It'll cost more.
It's like unequivocally, it's gonna cost more, or not look as nice.
Right.
It's gonna be real plain black boxes, you know. But even then, it's tough to find any speakers that are at this similar price point. You know, there's not that many. Monoprice, right, would be a good example of speakers that are a bit more neutral, although I find their low price speakers, I don't personally love the treble on those speakers. It's a bit too rolled off for my taste. So again, I'm not wholeheartedly on board with like the Monolith Audition series, for example. And then looks wise, they are plain black, big,
black
ugly boxes. I don't love the way they look. So I mean, I would take the Jamo S Studio 8 series over the Monolith Audition series.
Okay. All right.
That would be my choice. Neither of them is my absolute favorite sonically, but I would lean that way because I think looks wise in that scenario matters more. So
okay. Well, we see where they put the attention on these.
Yeah.
I get it. There's a situation where that'd be worth it.
Yep.
So there you go. That sounds like we got through some questions, man, and we're getting out of here on time.
We did a pretty good job. Yeah, we got one more coming up next week, like we said. And so I will head back up to the top here to thank our listeners of the week one more time before we leave. Patreon.com/AVRant podcast is where you can go to sign up to make an automatic monthly donation. So a big thanks to our 134 patrons over there. And then thank you to Vince, Brandon, Sasi, J. Karl, Mohsen, Trevor, Alan, and Greg for your notes of gratitude and encouragement that you send in to us. Very, very much appreciated. And a big, big thank you to everybody who continues to listen and send in your questions. If you'd like to get your questions answered on this very podcast here, just email them to us at question@avrant.com. So thank you so much for listening. Thank you, Lee, for stepping in on exceedingly short notice to pinch in.
I still like this picturing me behind glass, just kind of
that's
asleep,
what it is.
You know, and they come bust me out of it. Oh God. And I run into my office and turn everything on.
And happy Thanksgiving. Check out our crossover Thanksgiving episode with the guys from Brightside Home Theater. And here's hoping, fingers crossed, that Tom is feeling better as quickly as possible and is able to come back next week. So on behalf of Tom, Andry, and for AVRant, I am Rob H.
And I'm Lee Overstreet. Now go out and listen to something.
Want your question answered? Send it to question@avrant.com. This is AVRant.
Now go out and listen to something.